Little backstory. I met Ashley when we first opened back in like May 2016. And yeah, we had barely just opened. And someone called me and asked if you could do a thing here for the fashion show. Because you guys were starting to do your television stuff, or it was going to be online.
Yeah, we did a docu-series for Comic-Con HQ for the Her Universe fashion show at San Diego Comic-Con. Have you guys seen the docu-series at all? Okay, it's still actually on Amazon or Comic-Con HQ. It's a definitely fun watch, and we filmed part of it at the Perky Nerd.
Yeah, so that's how I met Ashley, and I've kept in touch ever since. You know, stalking her, you know, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I actually ran into you at WonderCon on the sidewalk because I was really sad because I hadn't seen you, and of course you have a really long line, so that's awesome. But I ran into you by chance on the sidewalk with E.K. Johnston, and that's when you were doing the Ahsoka book with her and that tour. So I just have a question, is that like why you wanted to do your own book, or is that kind of like the seed that planted for this, or have you always wanted to do a book?
Oh goodness, kind of all of the above, but it did start because of the Ahsoka book. So I totally crashed E.K. Johnston's book tour. It was one of those things that for the longest time, you know, well, back when Ahsoka started, they said that, you know, kind of the general perception was that female characters didn't sell as well as male characters. And now this is back in, you know, 2008, 2009 when, you know, it first came out. And so finally when Ahsoka got a book, I was like, I am going to prove them wrong. I will do whatever possible to show that Ahsoka will sell books. Because I thought it was so amazing that Ahsoka got her own book. So I called up my friends at Disney and I offered to do the audiobook for Ahsoka, which I got to do. I apologize if you guys have listened. I apologize for my Darth Maul and Bail Organa voice. Because when I asked to do it, I thought I was only doing Ahsoka's voice. And then they're like, no, you're reading the whole book, which includes Darth Maul and Bail Organa. So I apologize for that. But so I got to do the audiobook and then totally crashed E.K. Johnston's book tour. And we had so much fun on it, and the book did so well. Thank you all for your support, who's ever read it, because the book did so well. So we just had a follow-up meeting and said, hey, what more can we do together? And my mind was on fiction because the Ahsoka book was fiction, and they asked me, they said, well, what about your story? Would you write an autobiography or memoir? And just the word memoir scared me. I was like, I don't think I've done enough for that. And but it got me thinking. I was like, well, if you would let me, the book that I would write would be more of an advice book. So I would tell my story, but more as an example of, you know, here's how I did it, and here's how you can do it too. Because without the world of Disney and without the world of Star Wars, you know, I don't think I would believe that I could dream it and do it. Like, literally, Disney inspired me to make my dreams come true. So, you know, thankfully, Disney said yes. They said, okay, no, that sounds good. So that's what it is. It's Your Universe is, you know, it's two parts. It is part autobiography, but more importantly, it is an advice book on how to dream it and do it. And it breaks making your dreams come true down into steps.
Well, I have been able to read it because I got it in advance, and I read it all in one night.
Oh, thanks, it's an easy read.
Well,
I'm no Shakespeare.
No, I was up until like almost 1 a.m., but because I had to put the toddler down, and then I got to read this. But I was surprised because I thought that it was going to be lots of words. But it turned out that there was a lot of amazing art in it by Ashley, which I like loved it so much. You like this. The way you flowed everything, and with your story and the art and the songs and everything, it's amazing. So how did you guys get together on that, and did you always want to do that for the book, or tell us how that all happened?
Well, I will tell you how, and then I'll let Ashley finish, because I kind of didn't give them a choice. When they said that I could have an illustrator, I said, well, there's only one choice, and that's Ashley Taylor. Because we had already been collaborating together so much. She has an amazing story as well. And it's just like, we joke that it's like, you know Lizzie McGuire?
Yeah.
So she like draws what's inside my head,
Yeah.
and we work really well together. So thankfully they said yes, and then Ashley entered the project.
Yes. Yeah, it was just like an incredible piece to be a part of, because every lesson that Ashley talks about in the book is something that I had gone through personally, and the steps that I took to become a Disney artist. And when I was in college, I was told by professors that I had zero talent. So when I graduated, I didn't do anything with artwork. I didn't put together a portfolio, I didn't apply for any art jobs, I just moved to Disney World, and I worked at Disney World for the longest time just because I knew I always wanted to be part of Disney, even if I couldn't be an artist for them. And it took years for me to realize, no, this is my dream, and I need to make this happen. So I stayed up for years until 3 a.m. every night working on my technique, working on my style, and eventually I felt confident enough to start posting my artwork on social media and online. And one day at Disney I walked in and I saw a flyer saying Disney Creative Forum, come in and pitch your ideas to Disney. So I pitched all this artwork to Disney, and I left with a contract. And I've been working with Disney ever since. So everything, if you're passionate about something and you're willing to put in the work for it, anything is possible. Nothing's off the table. So when I read your manuscript, I was like, this is a project I need to be a part of. Like this is something I have to do, and I'm so glad that we did it, and it's been such a rewarding experience ever since.
And I have to say, everyone's been asking, they're like, how can we get Ashley's art like outside of the book? So thanks to Disney as well. I'm actually wearing a brand new shirt, so we took some of the pieces of Ashley's art in the book and put it on t-shirts that are going to be at Hot Topic and on heruniverse.com. So this is one of them. Always in motion is the future, which is why we brought the donuts today, because I was looking at the Yoda shirt and I was like, Yoda, do or donut? There is no
She absolutely called me last night and said that to me. Do or donut?
Yeah, these are the conversations we have. But I'm like, dreams and donuts. Like, that's the perfect Saturday.
Oh, so I do want to ask, because you guys seem like best friends. So, and you happen to both work at Walt Disney World and you're from Florida. When did you meet? Did you meet here? Did you meet there?
We were set up by
Oh!
friends.
It was a match.com.
It worked out.
Yeah.
But yeah, we have mutual friends that for the longest time would say, have you met my other friend Ashley? You guys are cut from the same cloth. You talk the same. You have the same aspirations. Like, you're both very determined, strong women. You need to meet each other. And the first day we met each other was in California, and we were meeting up just to have tea for maybe an hour or two, and we were there for about 6 hours, just talking over tea. And that's when we knew it was going to work out.
Yeah. We finished each other's sentences and sandwiches.
Over tea. So when you guys did this book, I just want to know what like the process was, because we get a lot of voiceover actors here, which you are, and artists and animators and all of that. But we haven't really had someone to talk about the book. Like, we had the Darkwing Duck people here, and they talked about their process between the writer and the illustrator. So I just want to know what your process was. You came up with a manuscript,
Yes.
and then did you have ideas to give her first, or did you let her come up with her own after reading, or how did that work?
You know, you'll read in the book. If you haven't read it yet, you'll read. I want you to treat it like a journal. So in my mind, this book was meant to kind of be like a journal, because there's already spaces throughout the book where you can write in it. And you know, I was never good at keeping a diary, but growing up. And I say that in the book, but I've always had a journal in my hand, and it's always full of sketches and doodles. And so I wanted her illustrations to feel like that, where there's like, you know, little just illustrations all throughout. And so how we work together is, I mean, I should say I'm a terrible artist. But I tell her kind of what's in my head, or I'll give her a pencil sketch, you know, that looks like an elementary school art project.
beautiful.
And
It's always so clear what you want. Like, I can always look at your drawings and know exactly what you want me to do.
yeah, so that's kind of what I do. Well, we'll see. She makes it pretty, but I pass it off to her, and then she, like I said, she kind of just knows what's in my mind, and she came back with literally the most amazing art, including, like, she paid attention to every single detail. So I say in the book, there's a lot about the princesses. It's kind of my ode to all things Disney and Star Wars, which really, you know, you'll see. I think I have a Disney and Star Wars, like, chromosome in my DNA.
Yes.
And so I say that, that kind of, like, I look at life with Rapunzel colored glasses.
Yeah.
And so she even drew, like, Rapunzel with, like, glasses. So there's little details all throughout that you have to, like, read the books so the illustration makes sense.
Yeah.
And just knowing Ashley as a friend, like, I know the stories that hold a lot of significance to her and that influence her a lot. So I try to divide up what characters to include in the book and what special moments of different Disney scenes that I know is going to hold significance to her. So I just tried to stay true to her vision and, you know, create something that she was proud of.
I do have a funny story, though, because at the end, you know, I hope, I wrote the book like I talk, and I tried to be as real as possible. And while you're on your journey to make your dreams come true, things aren't always going to go your way, and it's okay, and you're going to fail. Things are not going to turn out the way you want them, and it's okay to stop for a minute, throw your hands up in the air, and just, like, walk away from the world for a minute. And I say, you know, to throw yourself a pit tea party. So I have a recipe for the perfect pit tea party, and you know, for me, it's just making all the foods that you like, and drinks that you like, and talking about the things you like. And so I kind of never grew past my favorite childhood foods. I'm still, like, stuck back to when I was 10. And so my favorite sandwich, which everyone thinks is gross, but it's really good if you try it.
It's good. I've had that.
Okay, it's so good. It's a peanut butter and jelly sandwich with Cheetos in it. And I tried to take a photograph of it, and it didn't come across. It didn't look good. So I called up Ashley, and I was like, Ashley, I need you to illustrate something that I guarantee you nobody has asked you to ever illustrate before. And she was like, what is it? And I was like, a peanut butter and jelly sandwich with Cheetos in it. And I remember she stopped for a second. She was like,
That's a choice.
yep, no, nobody's.
That's interesting.
Yeah, but she did. She got it back, and I was like, that looks exactly like I wanted it to look like.
So cute. And that's why I think that it was so easy to, like, just blaze through it. Because I was eating it up like your book was a cupcake to me. Like,
Aww.
because it was just
It's like the best review ever.
It was so pretty, and because what you mentioned, you wrote it like you talk. Like, you know how sometimes you read a book and it's just, like, so clunky? I just opened it up, and I actually cried a lot in the beginning because I was like, oh my god, why is this like? And that's why I say we're like twins. Now we're triplets because everything you said, I was just like, we're living the same life. I was in Arizona, you were in Florida, and I was just like the same exact thing, like getting in theater and loving Disney. But you had it right in your backyard. I just had to go during the summer, like with church trips and stuff. But and then you mentioned that, like the peanut butter and jelly and the Cheetos, and I was like, oh, it's like, I think that's why you're so relatable, is because you're just, like, so down to earth, and like, people just relate to you. So I think that's why I kept in touch so long, because when you came in, you know what? Today is like a partial eclipse tonight. Did you know that?
No.
Yeah, it is. It's like a thing.
What are you supposed to do on a partial eclipse? Like, I feel like we should be having an eclipse, like.
So it's like the
Party.
universe, something happens to our universe, her universe. It's like, it's crazy.
That is.
So I feel like I opened up this shop, and for some reason, well, in your book you say everything happens for a reason, which I fully believe. You came here, and then, I mean, who knows? Who knows what will happen?
You have to just, you know, the first step in making your dreams come true is to throw it out in the universe. Like, you have to say your dream out loud or write it down. Because once it's out there, once it's out of your head, you have to get it out of your head.
Yes.
I had a manager once that told me, because I I second guess and analyze everything in my head. And she told me, she said, Ashley, your brain, your mind is like a dangerous neighborhood at night. She said, don't walk in it alone. And if you think about that, it's really great advice, because if you keep it inside where nobody else can help you or hear you, your brain's going to sabotage your thoughts. But the second you take what you want and you throw it out into the universe, somebody else will help you, or they will hold you accountable.
Exactly.
And so that's the first step, is to throw it out into the universe.
And I'm going to throw it out in the universe to the audience if you guys want to start asking questions. Raise your hand. Yes.
How did you meet David, and how interested and involved is he in your universe, and vice versa?
That's a great question, and actually for the first time I shared the story in the book.
Oh, okay.
So it's in the transform chapter. So I break kind of making your dreams come true down into steps. It starts with a dream, then a wish, then you believe, then you do, then you transform, and then you trust. And David was really instrumental in kind of my story and my journey of kind of transforming what I wanted to do into making it happen and making it a reality. So I won't spoil it too much. I will tell you, we grew up 35 minutes apart in Orlando, Florida, but we met out here in California. So we had to go completely across the country to meet each other. But you know, he was very important. He was very important to my dream and my journey, and also even her universe. So I couldn't have done it without him. And I think, you know, whether it's, you know, I say in there, whether it's your husband or whether it's your friend or whether it's a family member, it takes teamwork to make the dream work. And it's really important to build your team.
All right, who else has a question? Ron?
A lot of us were surprised and shocked, and just basically the social media and the internet blew up at the ending of Star Wars Rebels and seeing Ahsoka now like almost at her prime. I mean, maybe past her prime, but just really at a strong point. And people are coming up with like fan fiction and theories about where her character wants to go. So, like, if you were to write your own fanfic or put your own script and words into any future Star Wars animation projects, where would you like to see Ahsoka go?
You know, it's funny. I get this question all the time. And I will tell you, trust me, you don't want the Star Wars story I would tell.
There's Pony Farm.
Yes, there's a reason that I don't write, you know, the episodes, because Dave Filoni and his team are so incredible. You know, I don't have a say or input into the stories because they are really the masters in telling the Ahsoka story, especially Dave Filoni. Where I've had input is in her personality. And, you know, really, I was very fortunate that, and you'll read about it in here, they originally wanted Ahsoka to have an Icelandic accent, and I butchered it. And I kind of had a little bit of an attitude in the audition, which I usually never do, but thankfully I did that day because that's what got me the part. I was snippy in my audition. And so being snippy in my audition got me the role of Snips. But really, they allowed me to bring my own kind of sense of humor, my own personality to the role. But I do leave the storytelling up to Dave Filoni because if it was up to me, Ahsoka would be living on a pony farm.
And then right next to you, Ron. Yeah, go ahead.
What was it like being on That's a Raven?
Oh my goodness. I love That's a Raven. Still to this day, you know, that was actually, again, I talk about it in great detail in the book. That was my dream. I didn't even dream to be a character in Star Wars because I didn't even think it was possible. But my dream was to be on the Disney Channel. And so when I moved to California, I didn't want to win an Oscar. I didn't want, you know, to win an Emmy. I literally just wanted to be on the Disney Channel. That was it for me. And so when I became Muffy on That's a Raven, it was literally a dream come true. And kind of like Rapunzel, I had to find my next dream, my new dream. But yeah, Muffy, it will forever hold a special place in my heart. I promise I'm not mean like her. But Muffy would say, Alana said she really likes the Perky Nerd.
Deb?
How long did you have to sit on the secret of the new Clone Wars, and what did you think when Dave said, "Hey, we're doing it again"?
Yes. So I found out in January that the Clone Wars was coming back. I was shocked. I actually didn't hear it from Dave first, which wasn't his plan. He wanted to call all the actors, but I had heard it from someone else, and so I didn't believe it. I was literally in disbelief because, I mean, I say in great detail in the book, the impossible is possible. But in my mind, and I think it was because I was so heartbroken when Clone Wars ended, that I put that chapter away, and I literally thought it was the impossible. I thought Clone Wars coming back was literally impossible. And truthfully, I saw everyone's tweets, like, save the Clone Wars, and I was just like, that's sweet. I know that they're trying to bring it back, but it's not going to happen. Like, that was the one thing I was actually pretty negative on, that it wasn't going to happen. And so when I, got word that it was coming back, I didn't believe it until I heard from Dave. And so when I got the call from my agent saying that, I had my first session, I'm like, I still haven't heard from Dave. Like, this isn't real. And so I called him and I was like, do you have something to tell me? And he was like, why? And I was like, this thing called Clone Wars is coming back. And he was like, oh, yeah, how do you know? And so he told me, and I literally, I started tearing up at the time, and but then had to keep it a secret. And I thought we were going to have to keep a secret for a lot longer, and it was like torture. And then when I found out that we were going to get to share it at Comic-Con, we were so excited. A, because it's in time for the 10th anniversary, but B, we didn't have to keep the secret for too long. And I was amazed that we pulled it off. Like, how many people were surprised? Genuinely surprised? Okay. So, in the day and age today, with social media and spoilers everywhere, I think it was shocking that we were able to keep it a surprise. So, we're working on it now, and it's coming to the Disney streaming service.
So awesome. I'm so excited. I know someone in the back. Yes.
So first off, congrats again on the reboot of Clone Wars.
Thank
But
you.
back at Comic-Con, did you design that entire dress at your fashion show with all the sex scenes?
It was a collaboration for sure. Andrew McLean has designed my fashion show gowns literally for the past 4 years. And similar to how I collaborate with Ashley Taylor, it is very much a collaboration. And I usually like to throw crazy things out, and then he has to be the one to figure it out. Because I don't sew, so I can see it in my head, and then he literally has the hard job. So after we did the Lego gown 2 years ago, which is when I think I was in here, that was the year I'd done the first ever Lego couture gown that could walk the runway, that could actually move.
It was so cool.
Yeah,
I
it was.
didn't see it in person, but the pictures, I was like, oh my god, how much did it weigh?
It weighed over 25 pounds, and it's 10,000 Lego bricks. And, yeah. So, but it kind of becomes infectious. Once you kind of break a record like that, you're like, I want to do it again. And so I thought, what's the next best thing to Lego in our world? And I thought, Funko Pops. Let's try to figure out how to make a couture gown out of Funko Pops. Why not? And so it's the 25th anniversary of Nightmare Before Christmas, and I called up my friends from Funko and said, are you doing anything for Nightmare Before Christmas? And they said, Jack Skellington. So I was like, great, can you get me 1,000 Jack heads? And thankfully, they were able to make it happen. And then I called up Andrew, and I asked him first. I said, hey, you want to make my gown again? And he was like, sure. And I was like, okay, well, you have to figure out how to make a couture gown out of 1,000 Funko Pops. And it was silent on the other end. And he sent me back the first round of sketches, and it was a gown just decorated with Funko Pop. So it was mostly fabric. And I called him back and I was like, Andrew, these sketches are beautiful, but no. I said, in order to break this record, I have to have a gown made out of Funko Pops. And so he came back, and we decided to make it shorter because I realized if it was floor length, I wouldn't be able to walk in it. So it's a little over 500 Funko Pops, and it weighed 40 pounds. And pretty much, aside from just a petticoat and a little foam was the base on the bodice, everything else was Funko Pops. It was wire and Funko Pops, so there was very little sewing that went into this gown.
Did it hurt? Like to wear?
Well, the thing is I was, I don't know if, how many Doctor Who fans are out there? Okay, awesome. So we had a surprise guest at our fashion show this year. We had Jodie Whittaker, the new Doctor, and we found out about 2 days before that she was going to come to the fashion show, and so we had a whole plan. I was actually supposed to change out of my gown into her costume, and I was going to walk the runway, and she was going to come out behind me and surprise me. Well, she got there early, and we're backstage, and I'm like, oh gosh, like she was like 40 minutes early. And so she was like, she surprised us, and she was like, you know, I've never walked the runway before. She goes, would you mind if I walked your runway? And I'm like, would I mind? Like, you're Jodie Whittaker, of course you can. And then she was like, man, if only I had my sonic screwdriver. And it just so happened we had it, because I was going to carry it. And I was like, as a matter of fact, we have it right here. And she was like, if only I had my coat. And I was like, as a matter of fact, we have your coat right here. And so she came up with this plan. She was like, I'm going to put my coat on. I'm going to pretend to be one of your models. And then, you know, just walk the runway and then throw the hood off at the end of the runway and, you know, surprise the audience. But by her doing that meant I had to stay in my dress for 4 hours. And I don't recommend it. It literally, because I had a corset on to keep it up, it kind of rubbed me raw a little bit, like on my hip. Because when you have 40 pounds like digging into you, but no pain, no gain. I will do anything for fashion.
You look
Yeah,
great.
You did.
it's all
You
good.
look very good.
I've recovered. That's all that matters.
Yeah.
I don't quite know how to ask this, but I'm really intrigued with the idea of like empowered women empowering each other. And I know the two of you have been traveling all around the world together, and I wonder what that's done to your working relationship.
Oh, goodness.
I feel like it's gotten us so much closer. I feel like when you can travel with someone and still have the best time, like that's a great sign of a great friendship and a great working relationship. And I just feel like we appreciate each other so much more, because a lot of times we had to share hotel rooms and we see how much work each other's doing throughout the day and how many interviews you have to do, or you go to sleep and I'd still be up designing. And yeah, I think you have a greater appreciation of all the hard work that we do to be able to collaborate with each other.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely brought us together for sure. I do think, and we've talked about this a lot on the tour, I believe everyone was born with their own talent and their own unique mission and dream, and it's okay if you don't know what it is yet. It takes a while to find what you're meant to do and
What's calling to you.
Yeah, what's calling to you, and sometimes, and I talk about this in here, you don't find it because I think our society, it's like we're trained to try to be the same, and actually we're all meant to be different.
Yes.
We're all like, we were given our own unique thing, and we should be different. And so to me, I think whether it is women empowering women, or even, you know, women empowering, you know, the men in their life, I think I look at it as, you know, I have my own thing going, and Ashley has her own thing going. We should all celebrate each other and lift each other up, because what she's good at and what she's doing is not what I'm meant to do. And
We each have a different path.
yeah,
And, you know, as good friends, we're able to encourage each other to go down those paths. Because so many times you could say to each other, oh, what if I do this? Or what if I set this goal to, and by putting out in the universe, going back to what you said earlier, and saying it to someone whose opinion you value, Ashley will always be like, yeah, you should do that. Yeah, you should go after that. And I feel like it's so important to be able to recognize that we're all on a different path. And a lot of times, even with artists, you look at other artists, you see the path they're taking, and you're wondering, why am I not able to do it that way? But then you can realize that you can create your own path. Like, there's more than one way to get to a goal, and I feel like we see that with each other all the time.
absolutely.
Well, in your book, you have a bunch of the spots, and it again, the flow, like, where did you come up with, like, all the steps? Like, you even said the steps super easily. I mean, I'm sure you memorized them because you wrote them, but, like, all of those steps that it takes to get somewhere. I mean, all your dreams are gonna come true once you read this book, because she
I hope
has like
so.
all these great things, like exercises that you have to do to get there. Because again, you talk about a lot of hard work. It's not like overnight you were on That's So Raven. Like you talk about all the things that led up to that, and
Yeah, you know, a lot of credit, and thank you for coming back to this and asking this, because a lot of credit should go, it says on the cover, Stacy Kravitz. You know, she helped me with the book. And, you know, the fact that this book exists and I wrote it should tell you that anything is possible, because I literally said I would never write a book. And it's because I didn't think that I had the talent to do it. I really didn't. Whenever I would start out to write a book, I would end up with an essay, and that was it. And literally I said, writing a book and running a marathon will never happen, and I'm okay with that, because I just thought I wasn't cut out for it. So when Disney gave me the opportunity to write the book, I said, okay, well, there's only one problem. I can't write it. And they said, no, don't worry, we'll pair you with an author and you can work with that author. So they paired me with Stacy Kravitz. She's amazing. Definitely, I highly recommend checking out her other books. She's written a lot about girl empowerment, and she's a very, very accomplished author. So we worked for 2 months, and she just recorded all of our conversations. And she came back to me with like the structure. She said, okay, I've been hearing you talk for 2 months. Here's what you're trying to say. and she goes, it's very clear that you're making your dreams come true down into steps. So she kind of had all the bullet points, and together we came up with the structure. And then she delivered a draft of the book, and it was wonderful, but there was one problem, and what we talked about earlier, it wasn't in my voice. Like, it wasn't as though I was having a conversation with the reader. And I had a panic moment. I literally did, and I was like, oh my gosh, if I want this book in my voice, I have to write it myself. And, but thankfully, thanks to Stacy, she got me over what was my brick wall. And my brick wall was the structure. And I didn't know that, it wasn't the writing. I could do the writing, it was that I didn't know how to do the structure. And so once she gave me the structure, then I could write it. And I joke, and this literally is how it happened, because by the time I realized I had to write it, we had Comic-Con. It was right before Comic-Con, so I had about 2 weeks before the first draft was due, and I had to start over from scratch. And so I had 5 days after Comic-Con. You're exhausted after Comic-Con. I had 5 days to turn in the first draft, and I locked myself in my apartment, and I took a 3-hour nap. And I literally, like, I was so terrified, I just went to sleep. And then I woke up and I went to the grocery store and I got Oreos, Lucky Charms, and Chef Boyardee. I promise I eat healthier than this. And I was just like, okay, I'm gonna do it. And I literally locked myself in my apartment for 5 days, and I wrote. And you know, I turned in a very rough draft, several thousand words short, but I have an amazing editor at Disney. Her name is Laura Hopper. She was so great with me, and she worked with me then for about another month to finish it. And you know, I between Stacy and Laura, had it not been for them, I wouldn't have believed that I could. So I'm super grateful for them, and that's what it is. But again, I'm no Shakespeare. It is an easy read. And then I also did the audiobook. So if you're not a big reader, I did the audiobook, and you can just listen to it.
oh, that's nice. I mean, you keep saying that like you're apologizing that it's an easy read. I think that's such a like good thing that like because it's like talking to a friend. I think that's why I loved it so much, because I could understand it. It wasn't like tedious. And then when you get to the parts where you have to write things down, I'm actually not going to write it inside the book. It's too pretty. I'm going to get a separate journal to do the whole thing. And then I feel like it's one of those books where you could do it again. Like you have a new thing, a new obstacle, do it all
every
again.
year.
Yeah.
New dreams and new goals to set for yourself every year.
Exactly.
You should. Your journey will change. It's always changing. I mean, my shirt, always in motion is the future. So you should go back to it. You should change your dream. There's something in there I call the alphabet plan. My mom growing up always said, well, when plan A fails, go to plan B. When plan B fails, go to plan C. And so I grew up hearing that, but when I started Her Universe, that's when I kind of called it the alphabet plan. like Plan G before her universe got up off the ground. So there is a part in there where there's a line for each letter of the alphabet because, and you shouldn't have it all figured out in the beginning because your plan will change depending on your failures. And I say failures on purpose because like, I would say the most important lesson from the book is that it's okay to fail.
Yes.
And we don't talk about that enough. Like we only post on social media the highlights and the things that do go right, but we don't talk about the failures and how often we fail. So yes, the alphabet plan will change as you learn from your mistakes and your failures.
You got to G, and then it was H for universe. That's what I like to do, make days. I like to be a day maker. When, like, but seriously, as the Perky Nerd, I opened up the Perky Nerd, and I just felt like I met so many people, and I was like, I feel like I make people's days sometimes. Like, sometimes people come in here, because, you know, retail, like, shopping, therapy, all that stuff. People come in here, and they're like, I just need to shop. I had a bad day, and so then, like, I feel like they would get uplifted after getting to talk to them, and I actually feel like a bartender because like, people come up to the counter and they tell me their problems, and I try and, like, give them a book to give them some inspiration and like, send them along.
Well, you've been so kind to say so many nice things and ask questions, but I have to say, I've been following you and stalking in a good way on Instagram, and I'm so proud of what you've achieved here. And you know, somebody once told me, and it's true, or I found that it's true. When you start your own business, it literally takes about 3 years, and I think are you almost at the 3-year mark?
I'm at like 2.5.
Okay, yeah. It takes about 3 years to feel like you're finally getting your legs underneath you. And then really about 5 years to finally feel like, no, and I don't mean that in a negative way. The fact that you've lasted 3 years is huge. And after 5 years, you know, usually if you know you make it to 5, then it's like, okay, you know, your business should be off and running. And I think the biggest misconception, if it's your own business, a lot of people, like, after 6 months or a year, they're like, why am I not, like, you know, an overnight success? Which I hate the term overnight success because really no one is an overnight success. But you have to have patience, and you have to be willing, you know, to realize that life is a marathon, not a sprint. And so you're dreaming it and doing it, and you're doing awesome things. So round of applause for the
I just feel like you came in here right at the beginning, and it was kind of like, you know, a little burst of, like, goodness. So thank you for coming in.
Well,
does anyone have any more questions? Because then we'll move on to the next portion. Yes, sir.
Yeah, aside from the Clone Wars movie that you were involved in, as a fan, do you have, like, a favorite Star Wars movie that if you were to watch, like, which one of them do you like the most?
yes, I do. My favorite movie is The Empire Strikes Back. I love pretty much the whole movie. I love that that's like where Han and Leia, you know, the I love you, I know, like, you know, that scene, they kind of get together. I am a hopeless romantic, so I do love that part. And now, I have to say, I'm such a fan of Dave Filoni and everything that he does, so I would say anything that Dave Filoni does, I am just such an uber fan of. But I am. I mean, and again, you'll see in the book, I'm just a massive Star Wars fan. It's like Disney and Star Wars, legitimately, I'm a nut. Like, I'm an obsessive nut about it.
It's a good nut.
Yeah.
Like a cashew.
Those are so good. Does anyone else have any more questions? Okay, one more right here. David Brew, go ahead.
You mentioned the peanut butter and Cheetos. I was just wondering what artwork didn't make the book that was outlined like that.
What artwork didn't make the book? I think it all made it.
I don't even know. I remember I had a long weekend to do all the artwork for the book, and it was very similar to your situation where I would just like hunker down with like McDonald's for like a weekend. I was like powered by milkshakes. And I remember them asking for a specific amount of artwork, and I gave them way more. So I don't even know if they use some.
Yeah, for the most part, again, going back to, I think I was spoiled. All I know is I really had an amazing team at Disney, and I was so lucky to have Laura as my editor. Pretty much everything made it in. So,
The whole team is incredible.
yeah, I think, oh gosh, I had one other thing to say about that. Shoot, it'll come back to me. But yes, pretty much everything is in there. I think other than, I would say, real life pictures. My parents moved, and so there is a mysterious box somewhere that has a lot more pictures of me as a little girl at Disney World that is non-existent now. So I was like kind of disappointed. I love my parents to death. That you'll see my parents are a huge part of my story, but I was like, Mom, why don't you have a picture of me with Alice in Wonderland when I was 5? Like, so a lot of like, there's not a lot of photos because that was pre-cell phone and pre-internet and pre-everything. So I would say that's the only thing that's not in there. But I will say, you will see there is a picture of me in my Karate Kid uniform because I did go through a phase where I would not brush my hair, I would only wear my hat backwards, I would not wear a dress, and I refused to take my school picture unless I was dressed as the Karate Kid. And so you'll see that in the book. I was very proud of that one. I was an odd kid. I beat to my own drum. I was the Karate Kid for my school picture, and then for Halloween I was Cousin It. So when all the other girls were My Little Pony, I came home to my mom and I was like, Mom, I want to be Cousin It. And she was like, what? And so she found me a black hat and brown yarn and hot glued brown yarn around the rim, and literally, and I know that this is part of that mysterious box that has disappeared because there is a picture. You see like the whole class and then this odd kid in the middle walking like with brown yarn, and you couldn't see my face. And it was, yeah, so that's the only thing I would say probably didn't make the book is more pictures.
That's what I loved about your story is that you talk about, you talk about being bullied and being by yourself and wanting, like, sometimes it's really hard trying to be yourself when you're a kid. And that's where I'm, like, coming in, like, Jack's going to be going to preschool and, like, next year. And I'm, like, I watch him with other kids here and I'm, like, be nice. It's just, like, and then you, like, you have your story and you have your story. I read about, like, you had bullying issues as well, and like I always went to theater because that's where I felt like you get to be someone else and you get to do all that. But it's like scary out there sometimes.
Well, I was, aside from Star Wars, I was very inspired by the princesses, and I think as kids, as adults, I think put thoughts out there. There are worries out there of like, oh gosh, are kids taking this away from a certain story when they aren't. Like as a kid, I loved the princesses, and I didn't take away that like, oh, I have to be saved by a guy. Like that wasn't my takeaway. Like I watched these princess stories, and to me, Cinderella taught me to never stop dreaming. Ariel taught me to find my voice. And Belle, speaking of being bullied, that was in elementary school for me when I was being bullied. And Belle, there was a whole song about how strange she was, and it was the first character that I saw where she was okay with the fact that she was weird and strange, and people were calling her that to her face, and she was like, I'm just going to be who I am and be proud of it. And to have such an influence like that as a young girl, that meant the world to me. So I talk a lot about that. Like I talk about what each princess, to me, what they taught me and what she means, and it's not necessarily, I hope that's the message that gets out.
Yeah, and you have the crest at the end, and you like break it down what everything means in the crest for each princess. I just think it's a really good book. You guys are going to be so busy tonight reading this book. It's going to be great. I don't know. I don't think anyone. We're going to wrap it up. So one more question, and then we're going to wrap it up so that you can meet the Ashleys, have your book signed, and eat your donuts.
Yeah.
So Ahsoka Tano, she was at first disliked by Star Wars fans when Clone Wars first came out, but she grew on to be loved later on in the Clone Wars, and since has appeared in Rebels and Forces of Destiny. But now the Clone Wars is returning. How do you feel about that? Are you excited?
I am so excited that the Clone Wars is coming back. Again, it was the dream that I didn't think was possible. So again, the impossible is possible. The fact that Clone Wars is saved and Clone Wars is coming back. You know, obviously I can't say much. I can just say it's coming to the Disney streaming service and we're working on it. But I'm just excited to continue to tell Ahsoka's story. Ahsoka, and you'll read in the book, Ahsoka's changed my life. I'm just as big of an Ahsoka fan as you guys are. I'm so attached to her, and I've literally, Ahsoka is the reason that her universe exists. Like, Ahsoka has inspired me to be a real life version of her. And so to continue to tell her story is just a dream come true. So thank you for your support, and I love your shirt.
Thank you. Oh, I don't know if you mind. You can say no. But I'm just really curious about what she sounded like in your Icelander.
Everyone asks me this. The problem is, so this is how long it's been.
Yeah.
I auditioned for Clone Wars almost 13 years ago.
Yeah.
And, or wait, no, 2005. Is that?
Yeah, that's
Yeah. Okay, so I auditioned for Ahsoka in November, I think, or October, November of 2005. So that's how long it's been since I learned Icelandic, and I'm not good at European accents. So I couldn't even repeat it for you now if I tried, because I haven't. I think I was so traumatized by that experience that I've never done Icelandic since then. But I can tell you, Dave Filoni wanted Ahsoka to sound like Bjork. So literally play like something where Bjork is talking, and that's what was in his head. The problem is he didn't say at the time, go study Bjork. He said, go study Icelandic. So I did. I went to a dialect coach that was not too far away from here, and for 4 hours I sat at his house and mastered Icelandic. But he taught me pure Icelandic, which pretty much sounds Irish. So I basically learned Irish, and Dave Filoni stopped me after one line in, after I literally practiced for hours and then days, and he was like, no, he's like, can you make it sound more Icelandic? And I was just so dumbfounded of like, I am doing Icelandic, that I stopped and raised my hand, and I was like, I'm sorry, but I am doing Icelandic. I don't know what you want. And that's what got me the part. So sorry, I don't mean to like let you down, but I don't even know what it sounds like.
You
anymore.
sound like the Lucky Charms guy.
Yes, the Lucky Charms guy.
Well, thank you guys so much for
Thank you.
doing this.